Empty hearts and neon lights, they're playing with my mind.
Hey guys, and welcome to day 67 of making random videos whilst talking to an empty wall and a camera and a clock and a light. I'm Alexander, and well, I just finished my med school interview via the app Zoom with a fairly nice lady called Mary. She asked me a bunch of questions and just talked. A lot of the questions were about my work in the hospital, ways to improve different methods of communication, ways to improve workflow, things I've seen go wrong, accountability. Some good questions, and I felt I gave some strong answers. I accidentally almost dug myself into a hole when she was asking about, do you think people should ever cover up mistakes other people make? And then, do you think it's ever okay to not report something? And I think I might have accidentally sort of suggested that maybe I had seen something and not reported it. So she's like, "Can you clarify this for me?" And she walked back my statement, and so I think I had to just like explain to her what I meant. That everyone knows that people do things they shouldn't. Sometimes in surgery, like anesthesiologists aren't ever meant to have their phones on them, and yet sometimes they ask people to put their phone on charge. Well, why would you need your phone on charge if you weren't using it? Lots of different things like that. But on the whole, I think it went pretty well. I did actually record the whole interview on the GoPro. I'm not sure that's something I really should ever put out there. Maybe if I get in. No, probably not if I get in. If I don't get in, it will ruin my chances for the future. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this one I'll just keep myself and look at if I get in and show a person or two in person. Anyway, topic of today, surgical stories. It's been a real quiet week in the hospital. Most surgeries have been cancelled, down to about 35, 40 surgeries a day. And only one patient of note. And what a patient he was. So I go down to the ER to pick up this gentleman. I run into an old friend from Grand Valley who's now a nurse there. And he just sort of gives me the eyebrows, like this. Like, "Hey Alexander, how's it going? Are you taking this guy here right now?" And his eyebrows are twitching, I wasn't sure if his blood sugar was low or something. Anyway, so I took the patient off ride and started walking up to the ER, from the ER up to surgery. And I'm just making small talk with this patient. Just, how's your day? I have a standing joke right now. Instead of saying, "How's your day?" I ask people, "How's your pandemic?" And the patient laughed, as I expected, and talked about stocking up on food and how it seems a little bit apocalyptic, that there's locusts in Africa and there's a pestilence and plague all around the world, this virus, this unknown secret virus. It's at that point I think I should have understood the raised eyebrows. He seemed to be a little too familiar with plagues and pestilence and pandemics. When we were in the elevator, he leans backwards in his stretcher to me. I'm behind him, and he goes, "You do know they're trying to resurrect the Antichrist in Berlin right now?" Only he sort of hushed it. It's not something I can really hush to the camera, but he's like, "You do know they're trying to resurrect the Antichrist in Berlin right now?" And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't prepared for that. I was just, "What? Pardon me?" And he goes, You do know they're trying to resurrect the Antichrist in Berlin, right? I've got people on the ground, and they're keeping me well informed." Now, it's not usual people like that. He really hadn't had very many drugs in his system at that point. I think maybe a little bit of painkillers, but there was no. I've never seen someone come up with that conspiracy theory yet. And I pushed him, prodded him a little bit, and he said, yeah, he had contacts on the ground of Berlin who gave him daily updates via phone and told him that they are attempting to resurrect the Antichrist in Berlin. So I asked him, "Oh, well, have your contacts told you anything else?" Yes, apparently they had. See, this conspiracy theory is a little bit more realistic. He says they're using the coronavirus as an excuse to kill and get rid of all homeless people in the United States, especially in San Francisco and Las Vegas. If he'd led with that conspiracy theory, I feel I would be a little bit more inclined to believe him. The fact that he led with the Antichrist theory is a little bit less likely, I think. But you never know. As a good example of you'll never know, I was offered my medical school interview I had 2 dates I could choose, Friday the 6th and Friday the 13th of March. In an attempt to prove I was not superstitious, I chose the Friday the 13th date. As it turned out, that date got cancelled, but the previous date had not because of the coronavirus and due to the shutting down of the Michigan State school. So I went from being not superstitious to just a little stitious. And if there is a big explosion in Berlin this week or next week, or pretty much any time to the end of the year really, any big explosions in Berlin, I'm probably going to attribute that to the resurrection of the Antichrist. I asked him if he knew who the Antichrist would be, and he answered, whoever the spirit of the Antichrist goes into, so it could be anyone. He seemed very genuine about these things. He asked if I was a Christian, and I said yes. He said, that's good, and I felt a little bit like, sort of taken aback, like, he sort of associated, okay, you must believe these theories too then. I really don't ever tell patients much what I'm thinking. I just poke and prod them and ask more questions. Usually that's the way to get them to talk. Anyway, talking of talking, I've talked quite long enough and said the word talk too often. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video.